Strap up. We're in for a doozy this week. That would have alcohol in it if it weren't 11:30 a.m. But there's sensorily a lot to go through today. You're welcome. And you don't even know the half of it. Today I'm doing my first, I think, proper book review or book breakdown of my channel. For those of you that don't know me, hi, I'm Kendall. New around here, welcome. Not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit? And I love trash, okay? I love garbage. I talk about a lot of garbage on my channel because it brings me life, but partially because I am truly a sadomasochist. I indulge in terrible things so that I can harm the masses by telling you guys about it, or at least ruin your day a little bit. And today, that is no different, possibly more than ever before, because today we're dipping our toe into Quan Millz. And we're going to talk about one of his most famous works. Now, Quan Millz is fascinating, and I'll talk more about him specifically, but the first thing you need to know is that he makes satirical, comedic, honestly really gross stories, particularly erotica, that have some outlandish title or cover. For those of you that recall, a few years ago, I think I dipped my toe into Chuck Tingle, who does a similar thing, but they're short stories, so you're not sitting there for like a day reading this book. But no, this is a full book, and I hated every second of it. I've owned it now 3 different times. I'll explain that again in a bit. And today, we are talking about possibly Quan Millz' most popular work, certainly one of the first ones to come up if you look him up, Old Thought Next Door. And sure, that title alone is quite befuddling, but I think nothing really gets you prepared for the reading experience that you're about to go on, quite like looking at the cover of it. So, look at it. Don't look away. Look at it. Look at it! Look at it! Look at it! Feel it. Get a sense of it. The poorly photoshopped face of someone's grandma on top of a 24-year-old's body. 2 random shirtless, presumably bisexual men. It's gonna get wild. But in ways that you won't even see coming. Double entendre. But before we get into that, we need to have a sponsor that's going to keep the lights on. There's like an 80% chance this gets demonetized. I never understand what they choose to demonetize or not. They'll demonetize a little cheeky joke, but they definitely kept more salacious videos that I've made. I don't know. Anyway, but watch this ad. Ad roll, Kenny. Thank you. Hello everyone, this is Ad Roll Kenny, and today's video is sponsored by Raycon. Look who got a new pair, baby. Oh my god, they changed the cases. Look how cute. Raycon's everyday earbuds offer great sound, great quality, great style. Look at this pretty color. This would be a really cool nail polish. All at a fraction of the price of other premium audio brands. Raycon. It sings when you turn it on. They have 3 customizable sound profiles. Clear, bass, balance. I'm a bass girl. Like to feel it in my shoulders. As well as noise isolation and awareness mode, so you can either block out the word a little bit or be aware of it if you're going for a walk and don't want to get hit by a car. Very important. They have optimized gel tips so they can fit your ear comfortably and not come out, so that you can take them on walks, you can take them on trips, you could take them to listen to your audiobooks, exercise, listen to music, duh. One of the most impressive features of Raycon is the battery life. When fully charged, the buds themselves last for 8 hours of playtime, and the case 32 hours. But if you don't take my word for it, take the words of the thousands of people who have given Raycon 5-star reviews. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so no risk in testing them out, baby. Go to buyraycon.com/Kenny for 15% off your purchase plus free shipping. Thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery. Quan Millz is the creator of these masterpieces of shit. And if you read it, it does sound like a non-black guy wrote it. It really does. It sounds like so cartoonishly ratchet that it feels racist. But no, I found out that Quan Millz is indeed a black man. Ironic. But yes, he has been the author of various Tubi-esque book endeavors, including but not limited to Pastors Eat 2, which apparently Twitter has recently discovered. I already know about it. I didn't listen to it yet. I want to enjoy my life because I still had to read this twice. pregnant by my mother's gay husband. And today, we are, of course, discussing possibly his most famous work, Old Thought Next Door. The cover of the book should theoretically prepare me for just anything. It did not. This book is incredibly gross. Like, the comedy, whatever. Like, oh, you know, this is reductionist and black, blah, 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 in blackness and blah, blah, blah. All that. It's gross. Like, it's just nasty and it's gross. But somehow, Quan Millz was able to make an entire book based off of this. Old Thought Next Door follows main character Vernita Ernestine Washington, a 76-year-old widow who has entered into, or has been in her sexual peak for the last few years, you know, zipping it and doing it, in the words of Wendy Williams. Very quickly, we hear that she's very prone to unprompted bring up her coochie. And not just her coochie, and not just sex, but again, in the most vile and disgusting way that you can bring up any of that topic. Just gross, okay? But since the death of her late husband, Clarence, she has found a new unbridled and youthful vitality through sex, particularly having sex with significantly younger men than her. And though her friends that are vaguely around her age are shocked, disgusted, and embarrassed by her very risky promiscuity, she now has the sense of freedom because of her husband's passing to actually explore all of the sexual fantasies and desires that she couldn't do while she was married to him. And she can't turn back now, especially when she finds out some devastating news that may be leading her life to an end sooner than she thought. Ooh. Allergies. They got candy straws at Tropical Smoothie, baby. It's watermelon mojito smoothie time of year, baby. Candy straw. Hell yeah. Ooh. So, honestly, the first few sentences prepare you for the caliber of reading experience you're about to bestow. And particularly what it's going to be like to join within the mind of our main character, Vernita, and her philosophy on life at 76 years of age. Quote, baby. No, I don't know why, but I make all old black women in my mind sound like they're from New Orleans. That's where my dad's from. So if I think of any old black woman with a particularly strong accent, I just assume. But this woman is from Chicago. So I don't know. Anyway, baby, let me tell you one thing. I don't give a damn what you think about me and my age. I might be 76 years old. This big, thick I can't do it. But this big, thick between my toned brown legs, don't act like it. So, as you may have gathered, Vernita isn't our average 76-year-old woman. She even says early in this first page even that she's able to stay young by men, usually between the ages of 20 and 30, gross, and siphoning their youth through their big black, that's a quote by the way, big black. That's why it feels racist. It feels like a black man didn't write this. There's so much mention of big black and it's just off-putting and gross. And again, feels racist, but he's black. So it's just, I don't know. It just feels bad. I don't know. I don't know what to call it. So the first few pages, or even the first chapter or two, is talking a bit more about the expansive sexual escapades that Vernita has gone on recently. And today, particularly, she's starting off the book with a threesome with two bisexual. Now, at first, she was a little taken aback because she's like, oh, I may be an old hoe, but I still believe in my Jesus, and this is too far for me for 30 seconds until I realize, hey, I might be down with it. So she ends up having a bisexual threesome with two quote-unquote gay because bisexuality doesn't exist for men. She's able to pull off a double potato situation, all right? And note that though these are very shocking and again kind of overly explicit in my opinion, I didn't need to know all that, but escapades of this woman, she explains that the reason why she's so wild, I guess, right now in her late 70s is that she was married to her now deceased husband, Clarence, for nearly 50 years. He was very much like a stick in the mud. She doesn't think of him fondly in these early moments. At some point, she says he has a tiny penis and definitely left her wanting sexually. She also called him a fat motherfucker. Which, just a side note, don't think Quan Millz is a fan of fat people. I just feel like there's a lot of just out of left field fat shit, which is rude. Not rude, it's up. I don't like Quan Millz. I've discovered that through this book. I'm more than positive he's going to be watching this video. Something tells me that this is the type of niche video that would really reach the masses. But there's something grody about the out of nowhere fat phobia, out of nowhere, I don't know, big black thing. I don't know. It's just weird. I can't put my finger on it. I'm not a fan. Anyway, you can't just make some weird shit like the Mothman or even the old chick being a hoe. But we got to turn it into, yeah, with these big savage mandingo. It's just like, ugh, I don't like it. I don't like race play, even if it's 2 black people, 3 black people, I guess, in this context. Like, even if a black dude told me, hey, I want to fuck specifically with you in kente cloth, I would feel it's still, there's something still going on there, isn't it? Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm too sensitive. But yeah, she doesn't speak of him particularly fondly in this moment. Though throughout the book, there's moments of softness and hardening and softening and hardening towards him, as well as other things, I guess. Sorry. Quote, as horrible as this may sound, I was so glad his ass was dead. I didn't have to be bothered with him no more. Clarence had died 3 years prior of a stroke, and Vernita had taken that opportunity to have a complete sexual renaissance of sorts to make up for lost time, considering, again, her husband was a rather straight-laced man, quite vanilla. And again, most of the men that she would have these rendezvous with were young, between 20 and 30, and nobody under 50. Vernita has a best friend named Alice, who's around the same age as her, maybe a little younger, and they met and became close friends when they both worked at the DMV. Vernita is now retired. I believe Alice is also retired. It doesn't matter. Anyway, and though they seem to be relatively close, they definitely have a tension in the sense that Alice is the much more like conventional older woman at this point. You know, she has her kids, the grandkids, blah, 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 blah. And again, though they're friends, Vernita also doesn't think of her particularly fondly. I don't think she thinks of anyone particularly fondly. She's an off-putting woman outside of the cougar shit. I don't know. I don't even know if it's cougar. When you're saying you're 76 looking for 20-year-olds, it's gross. Like, it just is. It's just gross. She doesn't think of her well either. But rest assured, though she doesn't think of her well, she is still a wonderfully supportive and empathetic friend. I kind of feel bad, though, for Alice because her husband wasn't no good and he used to beat her like a runaway slave. There's some Drake energy in the booth today. Feel like that's what I mean. There's an off-putting. The issues she has with people in her life don't end with Alice or her late husband. She seems to forget that she's actually remarried to a man named Percy, who is also an abusive piece of shit. People in glass houses, you know, because she talks about like, if I was Alice, I wouldn't be in this situation. Which, if you think of it satirically, that's darkly funny. Yeah, I don't know. So Percy was her late husband Clarence's nurse when he was getting sick, and she ended up having an affair with him before he died. Not just having an affair, she was, quote, slurping and riding his big, thick, veiny anaconda. Sorry. But he later went to jail for armed robbery for about 6 years, and because she was missing him while he was in jail, she married him. I will never understand getting married while someone's in jail, but people do it all the time. They do it all the time. I was watching like a YouTube documentary on this YouTuber who like has had really awful public relationships. And I'm just like, damn, she's always in one. So it is possible to just be in one if you have no standards. But now he seems to be out of jail. They got married in secret, so none of her friends or anybody know that she's married to Percy. And while he was inside, she was, you know, commencing her hot granny activities. But those activities do come to a screeching halt for a second when Percy suddenly arrives at home, fresh out of jail. When he gets there, he sees evidence of another man being there, and she's like, oh, it was my personal trainer, remember? Got a personal trainer. But that doesn't stop him from threatening to shoot her if she was cheating on him. But he ends up calming down because he realized that he actually knows the trainer. They were close friends. So I guess he's like, oh yeah, it's fine. In the midst of this, you know, ravenous sexual time in her life though, and just interesting drama, hot girl activities never stop. Well, it might stop with the early onset of a disease. One day, all of a sudden, she can't remember who she is, where she's going. And before you know it, she passes out and falls to the floor. After the incident, she goes to the hospital and they discover that she may have cancer, brain cancer that is inoperable. And she probably has like 6 months to a year to live. After hearing not great news, she goes home and says, I ain't dealing with an abusive husband. I'm gonna poison his shrimp and grits. She put a bunch of her blood pressure pills in his food. And she's like, all right, well, this gonna have to die because I'm not spending my last 6 months here dealing with this shit. Aquatafana. However, this murder attempt is unsuccessful, but it would seem that the trash will take itself out soon when a few months later he leaves her for a younger woman that he had gotten pregnant. Back to Vernita and her relationship with her best friend Alice. Recently, things have been going quite well for Alice. She had gotten a new boyfriend who's slightly younger than her, but very successful, named Lamar. And they get serious pretty quickly. That, along with her 100-pound weight loss, she seems to be the lightning rod for a lot of Vernita's jealousy and ire for some reason. But it's nothing that she speaks aloud about. And soon, Alice and Lamar are engaged, planning to move to the Bahamas, something that she is hesitant to do considering Vernita just learned of her diagnosis. I think I said that Vernita's not a good friend, yeah? Okay, so, quote, I was dizzy because I couldn't believe that ex-fat ass bitch was getting married and moving away. Her. I was supposed to be the one getting good news, not her. And being that she was now projected to only have a year or two left to live, Vernita was going to spend that time living it up. There's a lot of gross sex shit I'm gonna skip if not important. She ends up having another threesome while on Molly with a woman and a dude. That's her first time with a woman. I don't want to talk about it. It's gross. The whole thing is just really gross. A bunch of her and looking out the window at the movers who are moving her neighbor in next door. It doesn't matter yet, so it's fine. Well, actually, the threesome don't matter at all. They just added that here. Just be like, oh, wow, grandma, off to Molly, you know, getting a coochie ate. It's like, I don't want to hear anything about her having sex, but that's the whole book. So obviously, I like to torture myself. Sadomasochism. But soon, the good news for Alice seems to come to a halt when she has a sudden heart attack and is sent to the hospital, possibly going to die. Vernita feels a rush of guilt for the jealousy that she had towards her friend, and good things going for her because now she might die of a heart attack. And Vernita goes to the hospital, and that's where she sees Lamar, the fiance, for the first time. And she realizes she knows who this guy is. She had sex with him before on a cruise. Of course she did. It was a few years prior to them even meeting each other, Alice and Lamar, but this struck her with a great rush of anxiety and guilt. And as her way of dealing with any strong emotion seems to be, she decides to get some roughneck, felony having, thug. That's a quote, by the way. Again, her interests are piqued when she sees the movers moving in her next door neighbor. She also happens to see her new neighbor owns a neon charger, which is a dead giveaway that, you know, he's a roughneck and he's undoubtedly going to have just big black but she takes note of that, trying to consider how she's going to spend this next time in her life, only for her to realize soon after, maybe 6 months after her diagnosis, that she actually does not have cancer. Now, mind you, we're only 30% into the book, and I thought that was the main thing, like her living the life up, you know, before she dies. But come to find out, she didn't have cancer, but she did have a benign tumor on her brain that was causing the dizziness, confusion, etc. Even more devastating is that in the process of looking through her medical history, her doctors discovered that she had been taking a medication for her restless leg syndrome, and she had started taking it a few years before Clarence died. And one of the effects of it can be incredibly heightened libido, as well as the dizziness and forgetfulness and yada, yada, yada. And the medication may have also led to the formation of the tumor. So now her entire worldview has been shaken again. She's not gonna die. She doesn't have cancer. Her sexual promiscuity that she thought was just this late in life resurgence of her sexuality was actually caused by medication and may not actually be innate to her. The guiltiness she felt for cheating on her husband Clarence while he was sick could possibly be because of medication or the sexual potency or whatever is because of medication. A lot has changed. Also, her best friend is in the hospital and might die of a heart attack. So a lot's going on. And though her doctor is like, we should probably wean you off of the medication now then, if you're having a lot of these side effects, she decides if it's gonna mess up her libido, she's not only gonna keep taking it, but she's gonna take 4. That, and when she notices that she doesn't take it, she starts to get depressive symptoms. She's really tired, yada, yada, yada. So she's like, no, this, I'm not living like this. I'm not gonna live like I'm 76. I'm gonna go to the gym and take 4 of these bad boys. So newly energized off the pills, she's like, I'm gonna go to the gym. And on the way out, she ends up running into her new neighbors. This is Rashida from Memphis and her husband, Ricky. Ricky is significantly younger than her. And, you know, Vernita looking at her husband like, oh, he's sexy as hell. Actually, worse than that. She said something along the lines of, he was so fine that, quote, it made my juices freeze up in the Chicago cold. For the next 4 pages, she describes what he looks like, what she wants to do to him. I don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of ass eating in this book, by the way, that I'm going to skip. But like, if you wanted to know that, there you go. But it would seem that in like an ironic twist of events, the old thought next door that we're referring to in this book is actually referencing the next door neighbor. And Vernita is like, can't believe I got an old thought living next door to me. Hell, I thought I was the old hoe. Guess I'm beat. Off to the gym she goes, where she runs into one of the movers for her neighbor, cute Mexican named Juan. And they talk it up, yada, yada, yada. And they start to flirt. And before you know it, we have to read what I think personally is the grossest part of the book. They have sex in the locker room, the women's locker room. Surfing. Water sports. Not my kink. I think it's gross. Again, I believe in kink shaming, but hey, it ain't gonna stop anybody from getting peed on. So go ahead, Super Soaker. But perhaps even more unsettling than him just like, like they're like, yeah, do it. Like, ow. Like, that wasn't even there. Come to find out she was hallucinating and she ends up being caught by the gym staff peeing on the floor. She ends up getting arrested for public indecency. Actually, wait, you guys need a break. You guys need a break. Let's send it off to an ad right now because I think we need a breather. Good? Okay. She's arrested for indecent exposure, but they let her go, assuming she's just a senile old woman, and they just say, hey, you can't come back to this gym anymore, though. And then when she gets home, she sees Rashida, the next door neighbor, in the mirror when she looks in the mirror, and this frightens her. She's like, is that real? Is she me? Am I her? Was her husband real? Was this all in my mind? Am I the old hoe next door? And soon, what started off as like this kind of gross satirical erotica suddenly turned into like a psychological thriller, which, hey, with still like 60% of the book left, okay. She has some adverse side effects with her medication while on it or weaning off, but eventually she's able to reach some level of normalcy. And with that came perspective and a bit of guilt, particularly how she treated her late husband and now Alice. Speaking of which, Alice is out of the hospital. She came out of the hospital a while ago. Sorry, I must have forgot that. But anyway, she's fine. And when she gets out, Vernita decides that she's going to confess to Alice that she had sex with Alice's fiance before they had met each other on a cruise, if you recall. And it results in an argument. During said argument, Alice then retorts that she had actually Clarence, the late husband, for years, and his dick was actually really good. Your coochie was just dried up. He would also eat my ass and come back home to you. That's not funny. There's so much ass eating. Oh my God. Not to mention, I know you can't have no kids, Vernita, because you know, something awful about being infertile. But Clarence wasn't, and he had a kid. And that kid is my daughter, Sade. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, the argument ends with Vernita rushing Alice and pushing her down the stairs, killing her. Very death becomes her. Part 2. There's a part 2. So now that we've started with the erotica, we're going into the psychological thriller murder thing. So now we're going to introduce the crime thriller part of it because we still have 50% of the book left. Are you good? Are you taking your chances to like stay hydrated? Damn it, the straw got stuck. 3-second rule. Again, I don't know how we started from old thought to Law and Order, but here we are. Vernita flees Alice's dead body on the ground, races home in a frenzy, swaying from fear, guilt, righteous anger. Eventually, she gets a call from Alice's daughter, Sade, the one that we just found out is Clarence's daughter. And Vernita is like, oh my gosh, she's calling after discovering her mom's dead body. But no, she's calling, crying that her mother's going to take her out of the will. She says she just had a fight with her. And Vernita's like, when's the last time you talked to her? She was like, I just got off the phone with her. So her death, is it a hallucination? Is Alice's affair with Clarence a hallucination? Is Sade actually Clarence's daughter? Not an unreliable narrator. Not us using tropes other than big dick, big black dick. Okay. Vernita decides to drive back to Alice's place, and there she discovers a bunch of police officers. When she speaks with an officer, they say that she was in a serious medical emergency and was heading to the hospital. She seems to have suffered another heart attack. Hearing this, Vernita's grip on reality is continuing to slip. She's aware, usually in retrospect, when she's had a hallucination, and sometimes during, she's like questioning her reality, but she she can't decipher what's real and what's not. And that distinction is getting more and more unclear, more and more blurry. Yeah. This is also heightened by the fact when she looks at her phone, she doesn't see an incoming call from Sade. She never talked to her. So what was going on? What the hell is going on between these sheets in my home? Baby, wait, let me explain before you start to punch your cane. Girl, I'm about to have a fit. Oh, it's about to be some shit. How did I get into this? Should've never quit home with this bitch. You low down dirty woman, back to where you come from. Baby, wait my ass. Hit the streets, your ass is grass. Now, Mr. B's, before you done, say, how you know my name, son? Honey, wait, I was gonna tell you. Ooh, this cat looks real familiar. Nah, think I know you from somewhere a long time ago. Sorry. No, I don't think so. I gotta stop. Okay. I think I know you, brother, very well. No. Oh, I think you better leave this place, cause I'm about to catch a case. Okay, that's enough. You're contagious. I'll stop. Stop! Okay, be normal. Okay, Allison's succumbing to her injuries. Sorry. And she dies. They're saying that they think that she died having a heart attack while going down the stairs and then fell and died. However, Vernita is like, did she die the way I think she died? Me pushing her down the stairs. When the police arrive, Vernita considers confessing, only to find out that they already have a suspect and had apprehended him already. Again, what is real, what is not, still blurring. But the police are saying that Alice was actually killed by a man who was looking to rob her and killed her in the struggle. There are cameras with evidence to prove this. Just as things seem to be getting that much worse, here comes Percy coming back, screaming like, take me back, baby, please, baby, please, baby, please. My theory is that the new chick wasn't interested in him anymore. She was like, get the f out. So he's like, okay, let me go back to Vernita. But Vernita is staunchly opposed to it. She's like, no, get away from here. And in order to accept him back in, he ends up threatening to tell people about her little secret about Clarence. What's the little secret about Clarence? Apparently, Percy had, quote, done Vernita a favor several years back in regards to Clarence when he was Clarence's nurse. It would seem she had gotten him to kill Clarence, and in order to keep that secret, he wants her to help him find a dude that robbed him. Apparently, he said he invested money into some real estate guy and he was going to flip it, and he just disappeared with the money. She protests, so he strikes her and threatens to shoot her. What happened to the story being about an old thought next door? Through hearing his description of the man that he gave the money to, Vernita is able to deduce that the man is actually Lamar, Alice's fiance. Percy continues to be the horrible, abusive piece of shit that he always was. He's like, make me food, give me I'm on. He also shoots a quote-unquote warning shot near her face with his gun that her other neighbor, Mr. Kilpatrick, ends up hearing. White man, real nosy. He would come over and he's like, hey, is everything all right over there? And she's like shushing him away like, oh, we're fine, we're fine. They have dubious sex, and while on top of him, she takes the opportunity to stab him to death with a letter opener that was on her nightstand. I think killing is a great idea, personally. When the police arrive, she tells them that he was abusive and she killed him in self-defense. The detective that interviews her is a Detective Colvin, and he leads her to the hospital and suggests that she gets a kit. So at this point, we shift over to Detective Colvin's point of view. He's our second star player here, entering like 60% through the book at this point, 70%, whatever. And he's in every way possible a stereotypical cop on the edge. He's a renegade, loose cannon cop that goes beyond what his superiors tell him to do, and he's reprimanded for it regularly, and he's quite the nuisance at the force because he's always going above and beyond when the case is closed already. And this is going to be one of those situations because very quickly, for some reason, he deduces that Vernita isn't as innocent as she seems. The woman with early stage dementia who was just sexually assaulted and had to kill her assailant, she's not the victim. Because she's just like not like the other grannies. Why is she driving a nice sports car if she's a victim? So he goes looking through her stuff to find that she had a stocking full of oranges that he deduced she used to self-inflict wounds to feign as if she was attacked and had to kill him in self-defense. Great work. Back to Vernita. She's becoming more and more emotionally unstable. She begins to even have auditory hallucinations, like hearing voices. She would hear the voices, particularly of Alice, Percy, and Clarence. The police come to her home during her having an episode that had alarmed the neighbors or something, and Detective Colvin comes over for more follow-up questions in regards to the case. Vernita says that Percy was her late husband's caretaker and they had remained friends since he died. And just as that conversation comes to an end, he asks if she prefers tangerine or oranges. He's on to her. Okay. Before we can get anywhere with that, he is called back to the station and reprimanded because he's been doing his own ongoing investigation about Vernita, even though the case is already closed. Regardless of whatever vague, and it's when I say vague evidence that Colvin has, the lieutenant is like, stop it, sit down, stop all that meddling, do your job. But his interest continues until he eventually finds out about the P gym incident. All that does is support that she might be mentally unwell. A 76-year-old woman with early dementia peeing on the floor in a gym doesn't make her sound more of an assailant. Like, he ends up discovering more information. I don't feel like going into the logistics of how he does that, but basically about Percy when he was a nurse. And come to find out, he finds out more of his criminal history, his employment history, and he called up one of the people that he used to work with at the nursing home. She's shocked to hear that he was in anything nefarious because he was so well liked at the place, and to hear that he was arrested for assaulting a woman was particularly strange because as far as she knew, he was gay. I don't know. Who cares? Because we saw him do it, us the readers. So again, bisexualidad, whatever. Ambidextrous. Vernita ends up going to a hotel for escape for a few days to get away from her house and decides to spend several pages praying away her hallucinations. She also calls her doctor in a frenzy, again, heightened emotion, calls the receptionist, cusses her out. When he calls back, she cusses him out too. And he's like, I feel like you're experiencing a dementia breakdown. I'm gonna need you to stay put. Like, we can help you. And she's furious and completely disregards it. And she's like, I'm gonna find my own cure. Meanwhile, Detective Colvin is still being his renegade self to such an extent that he is now stalking Vernita's home and decides to walk in when she's not there because he just can't let the case go. Finding out that Percy was gay, by erasure. So that means that there was no way that he could have assaulted a woman. I'm like, what the f? Also, if we think of assault as an exploration of power or an exertion of power, is a better word of that, sorry. The sexuality of the assailant means nothing. It's about exerting power. But that's whatever. If I really sit here and talk about all the problematic issues with the book by Quan Millz, I'll never be done. Even as a quote unquote comedy, it's just like, what the f? Anyway, while he's there, he's approached by the nosy neighbor, the white guy, and he says that he believes that she has severe dementia just because of some outbursts that he's heard. And so Detective Colvin goes to her door, realizing that she's not there. He breaks in. He breaks into the house. I don't know if it's because he takes his job too seriously or not seriously enough. Because what? That's like how I feel when you're playing like an adventure game and you got the bad guy shooting at you while the building's on fire. Very Uncharted. Like, I know you're not getting paid enough to be burned alive down here, but okay. And while he's looking around, he ends up being caught by her cleaning staff, who is very open with saying, like, we think she has bad vibes. We're just telling you, dude, we think she has bad vibes. Eventually, he discovers her laptop in the basement and it has a bit of blood on it, but he's like, this is going to be the smoking gun to get her to go to jail, and I'm sure it'll be admissible when an off-duty cop broke into a woman's home and illegally, without a warrant, and stole her items for processing for evidence. I'm sure that'll work, but whatever. Meanwhile, Vernita eventually remembers that Alice is dead, so she remembers to feel bad about that. At this point, I guess believing that whoever broke into her house, so the police said, must be involved. And eventually she ends up deciding to call Sade, her daughter, to check on her, send condolences or whatever. But Sade is confused because she's like, Miss Vernita, I haven't talked to you in months. And she's like, what are you talking about? Your mom just died. I've talked to you a few days ago. And she was like, no, Mom died 5 years ago. Dun, dun, dun. Remember when this was about an old thought next door? What happened to that? I don't want to go back. This is better than that. But also we discover in this conversation that Lamar, who we thought was Alice's fiance, is actually Sade's husband and has always been Sade's husband. They got married on a cruise. Concerned about her, Sade decides to rush over to visit Vernita. And as she drives back, she gets a call from that nosy neighbor saying, Vernita, the police in your house, they saying they found 3 bodies in the basement. Detective Colvin ends up getting suspended for 2 weeks for crime, the breaking into. Apparently, they found out about that. Someone had seen him, maybe the white neighbor or whatever had said something, and they're like, "Yeah, what?" And he was like, "Well, they found 3 bodies." He was like, and as his lieutenant reprimands him, he indirectly accuses him of perhaps bringing the 3 bodies to her house in the basement of an elderly victim. But that is the part he's less concerned about. He's really annoyed about internal affairs poking their nose around. So you're getting suspended for 2 weeks because that's worth 2 weeks suspension. I think you could do a little more than that, but okay. And then after that suspension, they end up bringing him back in after doing an investigation. And they were like, "We know that you thought that the 77-year-old victim with dementia was a murderous psychopath, and you thought that Percy was just perfectly innocent. But with very short look into it, he was part of a burglary ring. His partner in crime, and perhaps his partner in general, I don't know. And the bodies of the 3 people in the basement were of his associates. Those were Rashida, the real old thought next door that may or may not have existed. Well, she's dead in the basement, so she was there somewhere, as well as her husband, Ricky, though also associates, and a dude named Juan, the Mexican dude that she imagined she peed on him in the... Follow me. I need to get a whiteboard. And they're like, they're all part of the same burglary ring, you asshole. You're fired. And you're lucky we're not putting you in jail. So after a year passes, Colvin does odd jobs. He's down on his luck. In an effort to make some quick money, he decides that he's going to sell some of his old electronics. And that is when he remembers that he still had the laptop from Vernita, but had never gotten around to opening it because he didn't have the charger for it and it was dead. And then with all the commotion, he just never got around to it. And then he got fired. And while snooping around in this computer, he discovers various videos that Vernita had obviously accidentally filmed. One of which is her like talking to herself, essentially confessing to something. Murder. Don't feel bad. Just calm down. It had to be done. It had to be done. That slept around and f***ed your best friend. F*** him. F*** him. He was gonna die anyway. So, and if you were at all confused, she also does more soliloquy. And yeah, I killed that hoe too. Both of them motherfuckers be together now. In hell. Clarence and Alice. Gonna have a motherfucking baby behind my back. All this time I trusted that motherfucker, and this is what he do to me. Them both. And Sade, them all. She ain't getting not near a dime out of me. Nothing. Bitch can get all the money she can from that sorry ass husband. Lamar. Sorry ass couldn't even survive in the NBA. Is it supposed to be Lamar Odom? Wait a second. Was Lamar Odom a basketball player or was he a football player? Lamar Odom was a basketball player. That's funny. Okay, that's funny. That one is funny. You got me laughing there, sir. And there you have it. In the most subtle way possible, Colvin has discovered that Vernita had killed her husband and her best friend. But a dude was arrested for that, and there was camera footage of it. Soon it would become clear that Vernita had gotten an acquaintance of Percy's, had commissioned the burglar to kill Alice for sleeping with Clarence and having a child before Clarence could die and they get his money. And the final puzzle piece to put it all together is in the video. Colvin ends up hearing Percy screaming at Vernita, like, "Where you at, bitch? You ready for some dick?" So it would show that they were in cahoots because they were having sex with each other. Disgusted and confused, as we all are, Colvin gets so shocked that he accidentally drops the computer, shattering it. Over the last year, Vernita's condition seems to have gotten worse to the point that she's actually moved into a nursing facility. And once Colvin visits and gets her alone after lying, saying that he was one of her relatives or whatever, he begins to interrogate her, saying that she is faking the severity of her dementia, that she's actually quite lucid and understood entirely what she was doing when she committed her serial killings. Remember when it was about an old thought next door? Well, we're about to remember because this ain't a thought. She's a predator. She's like, "All right, the jig is up. What do you want? Money?" And he's like, "Yeah, I want $250,000 or I'm going to tell everybody what I found." Because at some point, I don't know when, he saved the information from the computer on a floppy disk or a drive of some sort. I don't know. Floppy disk. Anyway, and she's like, "Fine, but I want some dick." They have, again, dubious sex that goes on for like 3 hours. And I don't know if the stress of that much activity on the old lady's heart makes her struggle a bit. But upon raising her head up from giving sloppy toppy, she gets lightheaded and seemingly almost passes on to glory from it. Come to find out, that wasn't what happened. She was actually drugged. Colvin and Sade, who ended up being in cahoots trying to kill her so that Sade would get the money from her deceased daddy because Vernita would be out of the way. Follow me, follow me, follow me. But just before Vernita passes out, she discovers Colvin's gun in his pocket on the pants that were on the floor because they'd been mushing genitalia. And she ends up shooting him as he comes out of the bathroom and presumably kills him. Vernita miraculously doesn't die, but she wakes up in the hospital surrounded by police, family, and particularly Sharday and her family. And everyone else is really concerned, but Sharday obviously has this like tense hatred that Vernita's still alive. But the irony is that Vernita's will was already set to go to her church when she died, so they wouldn't have made any money anyway if she had died. Also in that moment, she remembers that the cruise was actually Sharday's wedding, and she remembered that she had Sharday's husband on their wedding night. And then I guess after that realization, everything goes blurry again. Where am I? Where's mama? And that is Quan Millz' old thought next door. Gross. Just gross. But at the same time, I will, again, considering I've only witnessed this type of like ludicrous, absurdist erotica thing in the context of like short novellas or like short stories. I've never read an entire story. I am impressed that he was able to somehow create a book that started with this premise and in fairness, took me on a ride that we're all gonna be forced to suffer through because that's, again, sadomasochism. But I don't want to do it again. I don't know. I listened to the audiobook version of this first, right? That arguably made it worse, listening to it. And then I read it. Well, actually, I began reading a hard copy, lost it in a hotel in LA. I know that cleaning service had a fun time with that. I bet y'all find the coolest thing. I love that. That's how I'll be remembered somewhere. And then I bought the Kindle version, which was 99 cents. I should have did that anyway. But yeah, he has many more works, one of which I saw audiobook wise is available on Spotify. And I may have to venture inward. Not anytime soon. I need a break. That was a lot. I don't know how I feel about Quan Millz as an artist, as an author. Sure, there's the comedy, there's the satirical nature, again, the absurdist nature. But some of it just feels icky. And I haven't put my finger on it entirely. But part of the reason why I make these videos is to process and to send it out to you guys. How did you enjoy this experience? Was it fun? Was it good for you? I hope so. If you like this video, feel free to like this video. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram and Twitter, both of which are KennieJD. We have the last episode of this season of Connect the Dots. We interviewed AJ from Backstreet Boys. He's so cool. So if you would like to see that, check out Connect the Dots, where I interview celebrities along with my co-host, Sean Peckas, people that are much more interesting than I am. What else? If there's anything else, by the way, that you want me to check out, books, I guess, now are on that list. I don't. Something about a bad book is particularly egregious, though, because you can't just sit there and watch an hour of a bad book. 2 hours of a bad book. It's a day investment. If you have bad shit or just interesting shit that you think I should check out, put those down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.